Good morning, everybody. It is Monday and day 10 of spiritual healthcare, so I'm glad that we can be here this morning. Hello to all the spiritual healthcare crew and to every new person that is going to be tuning in as well today. So I'm just so glad that I can be here and doing this with you guys every day, because I think we all need that sense of community right now, and to be able to still reach out and have fun discussions about the paranormal and things that we can do to start to build up the love and community and connection, and things that we can do just to get through all this crazy, right? Because I mean, there is just so much there's so much going on right now, and it's just amazing. So we'll let some more people log in here. I always have such a great group every day, and I notice more and more people that are joining and coming back to watch, and it's fantastic. I love seeing everybody come in the door and chat and being able to connect with so many different people. It's phenomenal. All over the world, people from all over the world. It's so cool. So today is going to be great because I want to talk a bit about. Good morning, Victoria. I hope you're feeling a little bit better this morning. Well, we're going to talk a little bit today about the pandemics and things like that in relation to paranormal phenomena, because there's an interesting history with illness and the paranormal throughout history. So we'll talk a bit about that today, and some of the weird cases that have come up that still remain unexplainable. And I've got some great questions that's relating to all of that, and so we'll talk about that as well. I'm also, of course, going to give you guys some processes to do today. A really neat thing to do that you guys can sign up for. I've got that all set up as well, so I'll be talking about that today too. So there's lots of things that we can go through, but so I wanted to start out, because we've got some great questions this afternoon. I wanted to start out with the interesting relationship between things like pandemics and hysteria and paranormal phenomena and all of this kind of thing. And a lot of people don't realize that the Society of Psychical Research was actually set up to debunk things like hysteria and fake mediums and all of this kind of thing. So there's an interesting connection between medical history and paranormal phenomena just in general anyway. Hello, Kenneth. So let's talk about that a little bit. So one of the more interesting cases, and it's something we see sort of spattered throughout history, was actually a very strange incident that happened in 1518. Okay, and in 1518, in Strasbourg, they had just this random outbreak of crazy dancing. Not even kidding, crazy dancing. And it started with one woman who ended up going out onto the street and looking like she was just convulsing and dancing around and twirling and doing just out of control. Nobody could get her attention. And she went on and on and on and on like this for about a week. And nobody could contain her. They didn't know what to do. Everybody, of course, was assuming it's possession or it's something like that. So as this was going on, more people started to join her, and they all ended up on the street, and multiple people actually ended up dying of basically stroke, heart attack, all this kind of thing. People just went nuts. So during 1518, there was a Catholic saint by the name of Saint Vitus, who was about 16th century. So Europeans believed basically at that point he had the power to curse people with this plague. Okay, so this idea that somebody could be cursed, that somebody could inflict all this on you and whatever, it went crazy. The hysteria was nuts. So anyway, at the end of it, when historians look back on this, what's interesting is that they believe that it was a combination of two different things. They think, number one, yeah, it was some form of hysteria, and number two, they discovered ergo, a toxic mold that tends to grow on damp rye bread. And they thought that might actually have something to do with it, because it produces spasms and hallucinations and all sorts of things. But we see these sort of interesting relationship between the medical community and, you know, what's been labeled as sometimes like hysteria or something like that. If we go back to ancient Greece, we see it with the cult of Dionysus, where, you know, there were these large groups of women with very similar symptoms, and they were, you know, just they were going crazy with but doing some not so great things like animal abuse and stuff like that. So there was a lot going on, and exorcism at that point in time was actually banned. Rome just said, yep, you're done. You guys are done. No more of this stuff. This is crazy. It's too much. So as we sort of go back in time, we start to see this interesting relationship. Victoria says, yeah, Ergo is responsible for the Salem witch trials as well. Again, like another correlation, right? So very, very interesting that we start to see this sort of back and forth between what people have assumed has been maybe paranormal, but is actually something that's being caused by something environmental. So that being said, we've got the other side of the coin too, where there's phenomenon that will show up that they can't explain, that they can't understand or figure out. One of these more interesting ones is the phenomenon of the Wendigo. A lot of doctors have tried to label it as a psychosis, the Wendigo psychosis and things like that, which has not been proven, and nobody's really been able to add up what the Wendigo phenomenon is. So for those of you guys who don't know or aren't familiar with it, the Wendigo was originally considered like Algonquin folklore, and sort of stories it crept into like Cree and Métis and different areas of Canada as well. One of the most famous cases being the case of Swift Runner right here in Alberta, where I am. And where the victims of the Wendigo are said to be, you know, essentially to taken over and possessed, and then attacking and eating loved ones, which of course is terrifying. And it's said to come in the winters where there's famine and there's that sort of lack energy going on. So there we've got a situation where, although people have tried to label it Wendigo psychosis, nobody really knows what exactly is happening and what's going on. And I ended up writing about it in my book, Teaching the Living, because it's just really interesting stuff. So anyway, it brings me to one of our first questions today, because I thought it's right on point. And this question comes from Shadow on Twitter. She says, many people, when talking of hauntings, usually describe the appearances of spirits between the late 1800s, Victorian wear, and the early 1900s to currently. Since there are so many thousands of years back, why do you think we don't hear more descriptions of knights, medieval times, Renaissance period, Dark Ages, pre-Christian era, etc.? I do hear some of that occasionally from European countries, but it's seldom. Really, really, really good question. And I think some of this actually might have to do with a bit of geology, and I'll explain why. When we start to look at the phenomenon called residual energy. So for those of you guys who don't know what residual energy is, basically what it is the idea that the environment can play back history, okay? It can play back events that have happened. Like, think of it like a needle on a phonograph, right? Your vinyl record is kind of pretty boring, right? Until you have that needle on it and it starts to play this beautiful music. Well, what we found is that the environment is very similar to that. And when under the right conditions, the environment starts to play back things like imagery, apparitions, noises that don't make any sense. And one of the hallmarks for this is it doesn't interact in real time. So if you, for example, have a poltergeist or something like that that's in the house and can move objects and can pick things up and shift them around, you probably got something that's more conscious, where with residual energy, you might hear a window break or your keys drop on the floor or something like that, and nothing's moved because all you're hearing and seeing is just this memory of what's going on. Now, there's been links to things like residual energy with things like electromagnetics, different types of building materials and geology and things like that. And the reason why I bring this up for this particular question is that oftentimes when we see apparitions from that time period, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at residual energy. So these people that, for example, they show up, you can't usually get their attention, and they'll turn around, disappear, and walk through a wall or something like that. And then when you go back, you find out, oh, wait a minute, there used to be a door in that wall, or something like that. And it's because you're just seeing this memory or this image. So when we start to go back throughout history, I think some of the reason why we don't often see some of this long ago history is because maybe either some of the geology wasn't there, some of the environmental factors weren't there for this to be recorded and emulated and played back. I think that's got a lot to do with it. I also think that sometimes when these historical sites are overly damaged or things start falling apart, sometimes we seem to lose that imprint a little bit. And why that is, we don't know. We really don't, because we're still back trying to figure out what's causing it to begin with. One of the great theories about residual energy is the idea that geomagnetics, such as quartz beds, for example, underneath the earth, things that will give strange electromagnetic readings will actually turn around and aid in the occurrence of residual energy. We see it in Alberta quite frequently with buildings that have high electromagnetics due to old wiring and stuff like that. So high electromagnetic fields, and we typically get this residual energy phenomenon that goes right along with it. So it's something to think about, and that's my take on why we don't see anything earlier. I think when we get that geological upset, I'm sure if you asked people back then, they might actually have seen something. Now there is a neat aspect of this phenomenon. I'm going to mention it because it's kind of cool. In Alberta, we have some of the most amazing badlands here. And we have a museum down south in Drumheller called the Royal Tyrrell Museum. And they have excavated every dinosaur under the sun. Now, a rumor has it, and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard this, is that people that have been digging out in the Badlands have heard footsteps, big footsteps, near where there has been dinosaur tracks and things like that, where they've heard things, really strange things, where there's been no other animals around and things like that, and they've wondered if they're actually picking up on the residual energy, maybe of something prehistoric, which is kind of neat. But again, we're dealing with land that's been basically untouched. It's all badlands out there, and it's kind of cool. So I don't know how true that is, but I've heard rumors and things like that about it. So kind of neat. So thank you, Shadow. It's just such a brilliant question. Excuse me. So we've got another one which I love from Sandy from Facebook. And she's got a great question here. I watched my favorite show last night, Haunted Hospitals. Thank you. Do you think it's possible to see more activity in hospitals with this pandemic? Meaning those that have passed on from a pandemic could relate to what's going on now. Amazing question. So here's my take on that. I think whenever we put energy and focus into something, we have the potential, and oftentimes it's pretty consistent, of attracting back the same things within that frequency. So if we're putting energy, for example, into, of course, something like this, which, I mean, it's hard not to put at least some of your attention into what's going on around us right now, we're going to see things that match that, image in our head, that matches that vibrational output, come back to us in various different ways. So I think in a lot of ways, we are probably going to see a correlation between these things. However, we do have, the information and the knowledge that, these people that pass over are really in this pure positive energy, and they are really looking for well-being. They're not still stuck with being sick, and things like that. So we have to also remember that, they're in pure positive energy, and they're calling us to that well-being as well. They're saying, hey, you guys need to, you guys need to get and make sure that your emotional state is really good. Come join us in that pure positive joy, rather than in worry and illness. So I think, you know, if we do start to see this activity, then I think we're going to see very much help coming from that angle of things, and the non-physical angle of things, and things like that. So I think that's what we're probably going to see an outbreak of. However, I must add to that, the negative focus that is being plugged into a lot of areas right now, that is being you know, really focused upon and dwelled on, also has the potential, I think, of generating some negative activity. We saw that with Victoria, I'll grab your question in just a sec. We saw that with the Greyfriars Kirkyard in Europe, where they were kind of housing people, and I think it was the plague at that point. And now there's been accounts of negative entity there, and they've had to shut that the Greyfriars Kirkyard down to the public quite often. So I think there's that potential as well, that if we start to focus negatively, you know, and we've got that collective energy sort of pumping into things, then we end up kind of with these negative intelligences that seem to form from that negative focus. So something I think we have to be conscious of. But it's also why we got to keep our emotions in check. So Victoria just asked, it seems to be that the collective is becoming more aware and more open to seeing spiritual energy than, say, our parents. Do you think that helps in this field? Yeah, absolutely. You know, everybody that's coming in to this with fresh eyes, and yeah, it is absolutely, it's opening people up. It's allowing people to come at this with a new energy, because oftentimes those prior generations really saw this as something that was a negative, and it doesn't have to be. So yeah, absolutely. Do I think it helps in this field that more people can see it? Yeah, totally. And more people are becoming open to new explanations as well, which is fantastic, because that's where the research happens, and that's where the breakthroughs happen with all of this, is that excitement. So yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to do a bit of a reading for you guys today out of, hey, a new book. Well, not a new book, but sort of a new book for us anyway. And it's another one by my great-great-grandfather, Birth Through Death, The Ethics of the 20th Plane. And this, for those of you guys who weren't here the other day, when I read a bit from the 20th Plane, his first book, my great-great-grandfather founded the first paranormal association in Canada, and he started working with a channel by the name of Louis Benjamin. And Louis Benjamin has had just, man, his information that he was able to process and transfer was really, really incredible. See you, Sandy. See you tomorrow. And so this is one of the channeling sessions that he ended up recording, okay, to my great-great-grandfather. He was the one that wrote it all down. And A.D. Watson, he really put his career on the line to have these books published, because he was a very famous physician. But he really believed in what he was doing. And I think the messages are incredible and very, very important for paranormal research, and just for everything going on right now. So I'm going to read you guys a bit of this, because I think it's worth it. And so this is what was channeled through Louis Benjamin. Deep down in the recesses of your consciousness, you realize that you control, to a great extent, your attitude towards life. You do control. You are the government. You are the power. You have absolute control over the attitude you assume towards life. That stage in your development, when self-consciousness came to you, when you realized yourself as something different from your environment, when you became an identity, that was the moment when you had the power of decision, of controlling your attitude towards life. You've passed through the experience of war on the earth plane that made you feel deep within your soul all the emotions, all the love, all the mystification that could be encompassed within the boundaries of 4 years. Through the years of the war, you have been a people thinking as you never have thought before. And this goes on, is the dominating feature in your further progress. I see this question in your minds, but it is not my attitude towards life, governed But is not my attitude towards life governed to some extent by external conditions, by my worries and fears, by my business, by my relations, by all the common factors of my life? Yes, but these things are extraneous. And before they regulate the attitude of your life, they must ask you, for with you remains ultimately the final decision. And I think that is just, it's so important. I highly recommend all of his books, you guys. He did 2 of them and they're fantastic, and I will post the links to those. So I think it's so important, and I think it's so important with what we've been talking about over the last number of days, which is, you know, we really do have the power to create our reality right now, and it all starts internally. There's so many moving parts out there right now. We can't even begin to control any of that, but we can start from the internal out. So, process that you guys can do to get there. And it's one of my favorites. And I recommend this to my clients all the time because they always have a blast with it. So the process I want to give you guys is one actually from Abraham Hicks, and it's called the Rampage of Appreciation. So this is usually the best time to do this one is when you're already feeling pretty good, but you want to goose it up, okay? So one of the best things that you guys can sit down and do is grab your journal, and you're going to pick a subject that you have no resistance about at all. Okay, so don't pick something hard. Don't pick like somebody you don't like or a situation you've kind of, you know, got hesitation about or something like that. Pick something like your cat or your animals, in my case, my snake. Pick something that you love, music, like music you really like or an artist you really appreciate, and write a paragraph just appreciating them, all their good characteristics, why they make you feel so amazing, what's it like to be with them or to listen to their music, you know, whatever it is, and just write a paragraph on what that looks like. You're gonna find that your emotional state by the end of it is way better than what it was to start with. And as I say, it doesn't work as well when you're really in the gutter about things, but this one helps a lot when you're kind of, you know, you're feeling content or you're feeling like, you know, things are going pretty well and you just want to goose that up a bit. So I highly recommend that. It's so much fun to do, and you can do it over anything, over any period of time for how many as you want, which is really, really fun. So I totally recommend Rampage of Appreciation. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is that this last month here is the last month to register for the course Paramook. Okay, so I mentioned Paramook a number of episodes ago, but I'll bring it back again today because I think you guys should register. It's so much fun. And what it is a class that's taught by the Azire Institute, okay, where by Nancy Zingroni and Dr. Carlos Alvarado, and they are some of the leading experts in parapsychology right now. And Paramook is an online classroom where you get to experience speakers, talks, all sorts of things, and study with some of the best minds in the world. It's so much fun. The live classes are over for the year, but you guys can register right now to have access to all of that, and then you'll get an update too for next year, right? So, and I'm there every year. It is phenomenal. It is so much fun. So I want you guys to look up Paramook. So it's P-A-R-A-M-O-O-C. Okay, then MOOC stands for Massive Online Classroom. It's seriously, it's just so much fun. So I want you guys to be able to sign up for that and get a chance to do it. It's free, no cost, just free. So definitely come and do that. So yes, Paramook. So, and there's a Facebook group as well, you guys can join, and everybody goes there and chats, and it's fun. All right, so our health affirmations today, important. Everybody take a breath. It is natural for my body to be well. Even if I don't know what to do in order to get better, my body does. I have trillions of cells with individual consciousness, and they know how to achieve their individual balance. When this condition began, I didn't know what I know now. I don't need to understand the course of this illness. I only have to gently, eventually release this illness. It doesn't matter how it got started because it's reversing its course right now. There's no hurry about any of this. My body knows what to do. Well-being is natural to me. My inner being is intricately aware of my physical body. My cells are asking for what they need, and in order to thrive, and Source is answering those requests. I'm in very good hands. My only work is to relax and breathe. And I can do that easily. Everybody take a breath. Now I want you guys to have an amazing Monday. I'm going to be actually on a podcast, and I don't think it's airing today, but it will, called Mysteries and Monsters, and that will be, I'm going to be recording that this afternoon. It's from the UK with Paul Vestal, and I'm looking forward to doing that this afternoon. And once that link's available, I'll be sending it to you guys. We're going to be talking about spiritual healthcare. We're going to be talking about all sorts of interesting paranormal stuff. So I will get that up to you guys soon. Again, a reminder as well, April the 4th, Ritual, Exorcism in Film and Television. I will be on Crowdcast live for you guys. We're going to be doing the same show I did at the comic expos. The full show, so you guys are going to get the works. And there's going to be some extra as well, because we're going to be talking about... we're going to be one-on-one like this, so you guys will be able to ask questions and all of that kind of thing too. So it's going to be a little bit more intimate than the large venues of the comic expos. So definitely Crowdcast. Get your accounts, April the 4th. It will be 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there. It's going to be really, really fun. Tickets are only $20. It's going to be a really, really good time. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. I really want to see some familiar faces as well. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Please send in your questions. Send in more questions. I've already got a stack set up for tomorrow. So please send in more, because this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you guys, and have an amazing Monday.